Year one of the Biden administration is now in the books. 1 year ago, the president of the United States was inaugurated. He was handed a working vaccine. He was handed a distribution plan for that. He was handed peace in the Middle East. He was handed a fairly stable situation in Afghanistan. He was handed a Russia and Chinese move that had been largely blocked. Russia and China were at least somewhat stagnant. And all of this was really easy. Like, if you go back and you listen to my predictions for Joe Biden, here's what I said when he was inaugurated. I said that for the first 2 years, you'd have a pretty easy time of it because the economy was going to go into a natural recovery. We had an artificial coma for the economy. We were already coming out of it by Q4 of 2020. And certainly 2021 was going to be a massive boom year, followed by 2022, which would also be a massive boom year. And almost nothing Joe Biden could do could stop that. Well, wrong I was. It turns out that Joe Biden could, in fact, stop that. Joe Biden was handed peace in the Middle East. And I said, I'm not sure how he can really screw that up because it's not like the Iranians are on the verge of signing a deal with the United States. How can you screw that up? Well, he has somehow managed to screw that up as well. I said, Joe Biden, even Joe Biden isn't stupid enough to be weak with China and Russia. I mean, at least Joe Biden is going to be somewhat tough. Yeah. No. So here is the thing. Joe Biden has had the worst first year of any president in American history. Any president in American history. There are only two exceptions. William Henry Harrison, because he was dead after 40 days, because he went out in the rain and then got pneumonia and died. And James Garfield, who was shot to death. Those are the only two dudes who had a worse time of it than Joe Biden in his first year. There are other presidents who have had bad first years. Don't get me wrong. Herbert Hoover was hit with the Great Depression in 1929. And then his response was bad. But that was an extraneous circumstance that impacted his presidency. That was something unexpected. Right? That was a circumstance that sort of fell on him. Same thing with Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln's first year, half the country seceded. That really wasn't because of Abraham Lincoln. That wasn't his fault. He was handed a really bad situation. Year one of the George W. Bush administration gets September 11th. Joe Biden hasn't had any of those things. Joe Biden was handed peace. Joe Biden was handed a natural track to prosperity. All he had to do was be what he already was, which was a dead person. That's all he had to do. Ironically, if Joe Biden had William Henry Harrison's first year, he'd still be a popular president. Because Joe Biden was elected to be not alive. He was elected to be a houseplant, as I say, a barely alive thing that doesn't speak very much and blocks the water stains. That's pretty much all he was there to do, President Houseplant. And somehow he has managed to blow this in historic fashion. It is the greatest self-inflicted wound I have ever seen a president commit. And that includes President Trump. And President Trump spent several years completely undermining the accomplishments of his own administration because he couldn't stop his fingers from hitting buttons on Twitter. Okay, but here's the thing. Trump was unpopular the day he came into office. Joe Biden was wildly popular when he came into office. And somehow, Joe Biden has managed to make himself an extraordinarily unpopular president to the point where Quinnipiac polls, yeah, they're slight outliers, but only slight, have him in the low 30s. I mean, let's look at the presidential approval ratings for example, Donald Trump. Okay, we'll use Trump as the contrast point because, of course, according to the left, Trump was the worst president in America. Okay, so right from the outset, Donald Trump did not have one day of his presidency where he was in the black in his approval rating. He did not have one net positive day in his presidency where he was on top in the approval rating. Day one, he was almost even. He was like 45% positive, 45% negative. And immediately, within like the first couple of weeks, he had shifted to 49% negative and like 46% positive. And then he just kind of stayed there for his entire presidency. He had some ups, he had some downs. When it was really bad, you had up to 58% of people disliking him and 39% of people liking him. But by the end of his first year, he was riding about 54% disapproval and 42% approval. And so he was underwater by 10 points, 12 points by the end of his first year. And now, here is Joe Biden's approval rating. This is unbelievable. It really is. It's incredible. So he starts off with a 55%, 56% approval rating. Only 36% of Americans say they disapprove of Joe Biden. And pretty quickly you start to see these lines narrow, right? But they're not narrowing to the point where he's anywhere near negative territory. By the time you hit in the end of July, he's kind of around 45% disapprove, but he's still got 51% approval rating. There's a swing of about 3 points on average, like a mild decrease in his approval rating. And then comes Afghanistan. which is when the president of the United States decides to shoot his entire administration directly in the face. And when I say shoot his administration in the face, what I really mean is get 13 American service people killed, abandon 19 million women to abject sex slavery, and allow a bunch of 8th century barbarian cavemen to overrun a country and take all of America's leftover military equipment. It turns out Americans don't like that sort of thing. And so Joe Biden's disapproval rating now spikes into the plurality position of the American people. By the time you hit September, which is exactly when this happens, right? The end of August, the beginning of September, you see this giant spike in the disapproval rating over the course of late August. By the time you hit the beginning of September, Joe Biden is now at 48% disapprove and 48% approve. And then it just gets worse. It just keeps getting worse and worse and worse for Joe Biden. So this is the thing. Donald Trump started off bad and he ended bad in terms of the disapproval rating. Joe Biden started off really popular and is really, really unpopular right now because he's crappy at this job. He is just garbage at this job. As Barack Obama once famously stated, don't underestimate Joe's ability to F things up. Don't underestimate it. Again, look back at the Trump chart for just one moment, because the swing is what matters here. Okay, the swing here is from about 45% approve and 45% disapprove to 52% disapprove. Okay, so that is about a 7-point swing, right? 45 to 52 over the course of year one. A 7-point swing in the negative direction for President Trump over the course of year one. Now look again at the Joe Biden chart. Okay, this Joe Biden chart shows a swing from 56% approve to 42%, a 14-point negative swing. Okay, so Trump got 7 points less popular over the course of his first year. Joe Biden got 14% less popular over the course of his first year. That's how bad this guy is at this. He's just awful. And we're going to go through where things stand. Year one of the Biden, and all of this is self-inflicted, guys. This is all because Joe Biden is an incompetent buffoon. It's because, as Nate Silver suggests, it's not that Joe Biden was ever a moderate. It's just that Joe Biden was always dead center of the Democratic Party. And the Democratic Party has gone completely nuts. The Democratic Party's entire theory of politics is that everything was crazy because of just Trump. If it weren't for Trump, we'd be back to normal. Right? Trump was insane. And it was all about the affect. It was all about the tweeting and all about the attitude and all about the crazy jokes and all about the bleeding from whatever and all that kind of stuff. Okay, and this led them to believe that so long as the president of the United States didn't say things like that, they could do anything they wanted and people would just be like, well, I guess things are still sane. No, wrong. It turns out there are two forms of political crazy. One form of political crazy is going out there and ripping on Mexican judges for no reason. And that's kind of like mildly political crazy because most people are just like, that's kind of nutty behavior, but it has no impact on my life. Then there's true political craziness, which is boys should be girls and girls should be boys. Everybody who disagrees with me wants Jim Crow. What if we pour money onto a gasoline fire of inflation? And what if we just surrender to China and Russia? And what if we just give Afghanistan to the Taliban? Like, just give it to them for no reason. Here, have Afghanistan. That's a form of crazy that has real impact on people's lives as opposed to, the bad tweets. And Democrats failed to recognize that. They thought so long as they slapped a kindly old face on an insane agenda, everything would be fine. Wrongo. And it turns out all that happens is that people begin to realize that the kindly old face ain't so kindly when the agenda is really nefarious. And Joe Biden is having a terrible, terrible first year. Mark Thiessen has a very good column over at the Washington Post all about this. He says, this is the lived reality millions of Americans are facing after a year of Biden's presidency. Inflation has reached a 40-year high, and we have a massive labor shortage with more than 10 million unfilled jobs. Biden signed a partisan $1.9 trillion COVID relief bill in March. And when Omicron arrived, there weren't enough coronavirus tests or therapeutics. Schools are closing again. Emergency room visits for suspected suicide attempts by adolescent girls have jumped 51% from 2019 to 2021. At least 12 major cities broke annual homicide records in 2021. We are experiencing the worst border crisis in American history, and a surge of deadly fentanyl crossing the southern border has helped fuel an increase of 30% in overdose deaths in the past year. The disastrous retreat from Afghanistan projected weakness on the world stage and emboldened Russia to amass troops along its border with Ukraine, putting us on the knife's edge of a land war in Europe. And while Biden promised in his inaugural address to put his whole soul into uniting the country, he just gave a speech comparing millions of Americans to segregationists and traitors. Yeah, that's a pretty bad record. That's a pretty bad record. Now, Biden is trying to happy talk his way through this thing. He's doing the Obama routine, which is the people just don't understand him. This is Obama's routine. Every time he did something unpopular, he'd be like, well, I just didn't explain it well enough. The American people, if they understood what I was doing, they would love it. And the American people are like, no, we understand just what you were doing, and we do not love it, as it turns out. And then you get the same routine from Biden. Well, if I just, come on, man, if you help me explain these policies, then come on up here, Kamala. Like, oh, yeah, that's going to work. By the way, even Elizabeth Warren, who is full-fledged terrible at this, the chief Biden critic from the left in the Senate, even Elizabeth Warren, how bad is she? Even she can't answer if Joe Biden is up to the job. She was asked, like, is Joe Biden up for the job? And she had reservations.
Let me ask you about 2024. Do you believe that President Biden is up for the job?
President Biden's running for re-election. I expect to support him.
His approval ratings are some of the lowest that they've been for a very long time.
I understand that, but remember, we've just finished the first quarter. We're just starting into the second quarter here. So we've got a lot of time, a lot of work in front of us.
I love that. Like, so do you think he's up to the job? She's like, well, he is running for re-election. Like, so is he good at this? She's like, well, there's time, and time exists. I like how they flash his approval rating on the screen there. According to that CBS News poll, by the way, he's gone from 61% approval to 44%. Owie. Yeah, those are not good numbers, gang. Those are really bad numbers. So the good news is the White House has found a reason to pivot. They want to pivot. Pivot, pivot, pivot. They're like Ross in the stairwell with the couch. Pivot. We have to pivot. According to NBC News, White House plots public reset as Biden's agenda fails. I love this. I love it so much. Every time the newspapers start talking about how a politician needs to reset, how a politician needs to rejigger their comms, what they really mean is this politician is super bad at it. Right? This is what you hear from Kamala Harris's team every 20 minutes. Like almost on the dot. They just set a timer on their watch. Like, oh, it's been 20 minutes. Time to reset Kamala's comm strategy. And Kamala's over in the corner saying, it is time to do what we have always done. And time is with a clock. And her team's like, okay, it's been 20 minutes. Time to reset that comms. And she's over in the corner like, guys, it isn't the comms. You're bad at this. Okay, it's not your communication strategy. It's that your policies suck. They're bad. They're bad. I mean, Joe Biden's entire comm strategy during his campaign was, what if I sit in a basement and eat oatmeal and watch Matlock? And he won. Okay, so like, it's not about the comms. It's about you sucking at this. I'm not sure you could be worse at this if you tried to be bad at it. It's incredible. Okay, so according to NBC News, it's time for a reset. It's a reset, guys. Biden's reset plan, senior administration officials said, is to make his conversations with members of Congress less of a public priority and to emphasize spending more time communicating directly with Americans. Yeah, that's going to go well because he's done a great job of that so far. You know, every week he gets on your TV and falls asleep. He gets on your TV, he's like, COVID is, and the unvaxxed are, let's hit them with my walker. I'm going to hit them with my walker. And Americans are like, that's not good. He's like, well, if you don't like that, here I am on your TV again. And I think that you want to re-enslave black people. And it's no, not doing it. That's not helping, Joe. What if I say that you guys are basically Hitler? No, this isn't going to work. Joe Biden is a bad communicator. He's very, very bad at this. This is the part that's so funny. He's a master communicator. The dude ran for president 83 times. He lost all of the times. The only reason anyone even knows Joe Biden's name right now, other than as the foolish, plagiaristic senator who had to drop out of a presidential race once and got shellacked every other time he ran, and was a senator from a state that is mainly run by credit card companies. The only reason anyone has ever heard of Joe Biden is because Barack Obama needed a buffoonish old white man to be his vice president. Now, sometimes I say that Kamala Harris was an affirmative action pick because Joe Biden said, I need a black woman. Joe Biden was also an affirmative action pick. Barack Obama was like, what if I just take a staid old white man so that I look moderate? That was pretty much his agenda. And Joe Biden continued to fail upward. The only reason that Joe Biden is president right now is because Barack Obama picked him for his vice president. And then his main competition in a Democratic primary was a senile old communist. And then his main competition in a presidential race was a guy who just blurged all over Twitter every two minutes. Like that is the only reason that this idiot is president of the United States. And they're like, well, what if he talked more to the American? You go for it, man. Put him on the TVs every day. More of him. He does a spectacular job. First rule of holes, stop digging. But Joe Biden is out there with a spade digging just all the way to China. There is a recognition we need to change the dynamic, a senior administration official told NBC News, adding that Biden has told aides and lawmakers he intends to make the shift. Yeah, there's nothing that Joe Biden does better than sticking and moving. That's what he's great at. Part of the goal is to shed the growing image that Biden is approaching the presidency like a member of the Senate, where he spent more than 3 decades. He's mindful he doesn't want to send the message his role is to be legislator-in-chief, another senior administration official said. Biden's advisors are looking at a variety of ways for him to engage more with Americans, officials said. There's no agreement yet about what the alternatives might entail. He can only eat ice cream so many times. He can only run naked after his dog from the shower like so many times. While there is unity among advisors about having Biden talk to more people directly, another official said, there's no agreement about whether the effort will work. No, there is. It's not going to work. I'm just going to put it's not going to work. Spoiler alert, Joe Biden talking to humans, not a thing that works. Changing a White House strategy to engage more directly with Americans is an evergreen reset plan that has been activated by previous presidents who have found themselves in politically precarious moments. For Biden, that moment has arrived earlier than his team expected, after early momentum from his sweeping safety net bill. Presidential historian Michael Beschloss said, oftentimes in modern history, when a president has frustrations and drops in the polls, the president will say, it's now time for me to talk over the heads of the elites and talk directly to the people to convince them that what I'm trying to do is right. Yeah, the problem is that Biden can't talk anymore. He just grunts and makes noises. Yeah. Biden has struggled to gain his footing on the coronavirus pandemic, which he promised to get under control and ultimately defeat. He's also been hampered by the collapse of Build Back Better. While some of Biden's aides have expressed concern, they're very concerned that he is seemingly bogged down at the White House, giving too many one-dimensional speeches from Washington instead of showcasing what they see as his greatest political strength, empathy, and an ability to connect with ordinary Americans. That is gone. He blew it up. It's over for him. Yeah, this is why he's not going to recover. The reason he's not going to recover is because once you blow the empathy line, it ain't coming back. Once it has been revealed that you care less about American soldiers dying in Afghanistan than you reaching a pullout by an arbitrary date so that you can celebrate yourself as some sort of grand peacemaker, which is what happened in Afghanistan, that ain't coming back. Joe Biden, Captain Empathy, was always bullcrap, but it certainly is not coming back now. And when he started defending his action in Afghanistan and dead service members in Afghanistan by citing the fact that his son died of brain cancer, like, no, none of that works, and it ain't coming back, and it is over for him. He's still got to be president for 3 years, but that guy is a lame duck right now. Who's got 2 thumbs and wants you to like and subscribe?